Well, this book, by the way, is down at AK Press. They didn't publish it, City Lights did, but it's there if you want to read it. I was going to talk about a conjunction or a contradiction that developed, and Laura and I could be sort of living examples of it. The division that happened back it divided many ways, but in the women's liberation movement, which was very new. Of course, it had roots and everything, but it came forth basically 65, I think, when that was published, and the civil rights movement made statements, and that's about the time I got involved when I was a graduate student at UCLA. But it burst forth in the public eye, I suppose, in the summer of 1968 with the Miss America protest. I was going to talk about how, within a couple of years, we were faced with this contradiction of feminism being posed as a anti-war, somewhat pacifist, introducing feminist ways to look at the world, feminist epistemology, and that turned into a very cultural movement. And then the politicos, and I had come from working in, with the African National Congress and the anti-apartheid movement at UCLA, and then, I was doing Latin American history, and I was involved in struggles in Latin America and so forth. So people came with different baggage, but there was a real divide, and you felt like you had to choose. Are you going to choose to be militant and get involved in the armed struggle, which was being called for, or are you going to, I thought anything that went on, women should be there, in the leadership, and it should be also women-centered in terms of strategizing. So that was a very difficult period. It's never been resolved, and it doesn't get talked about very much. But I decided instead, I do discuss it in here, so if you want to pursue that, Alice Eccles' book, Daring to Be Bad, discusses it in some ways. I decided to talk about an interesting phenomenon that came out of feminism, and how peoples appropriate ideas and then do with it what they want, so that it's actually an interesting story, and it's about the Sandinista women. Well, like many other North Americans and other internationalistas that sometimes were called Sandinistas from all over the world, you get that Sandinistas, everyone got together following the revolutions. I tried to think I was different, but I spent a lot of time during the Reagan years either in Nicaragua or organizing solidarity against the Congo War. Following the July 1979 Sandinista revolution that dislodged, in case I'm sure most of you know, but it dislodged the U.S.-supported Somoza dictatorship and its National Guard from power. It's been in power for 50 years. 60s movement radicals, along with a new generation of anti-imperialists, flooded Nicaragua in response to the Sandinistas' call for international brigades to assist with many things, the literacy program, and to help rebuild a war-torn and impoverished nation of 2.5 million people. I always say it's a country of 3 elevators and buildings and 5 bridges. That's how you get a sense of how desperately poor the country was. The Congress destroyed all of the bridges and highways. So it was total destruction, when destruction came. I first visited the new Nicaragua in May of 1981, 3 months into the Reagan administration. His campaign promise was to overthrow the communistic terrorists, and he did use the word terrorists, in Nicaragua, already underway. His policy implemented very fast with the announcement of economic sanctions and the withdrawal of U.S. food aid, which it very much depended on, because agriculture after the Civil War and the earthquake just before that, agriculture was wiped out. It was all had turned also to cattle production, so there was very little land left for food production. The United States had intervened in all the Caribbean and Central and South American countries victories as they freed themselves from Spanish colonialism, but none more continuously and brutally than Nicaragua. By the way, my great hero and mentor before I even met him, when I was a student in Latin American history at UCLA, wrote Great Fear in Latin America, and he's here, Mr. John Gerasi. I had the honor of meeting him later. So you see where ideas circulate. A lot of them came from there. Yeah. But I would say, and I don't know if Tito would agree with me, but no place was it more brutal than Haiti and Nicaragua, these interventions, and more constant. 25 years of marine occupation total in Nicaragua, two different periods of occupation. In the 1890s, then through the 1920s, until they finally installed a stable dictatorship they could control under the Family dynasty. A protracted armed resistance ensued under the leadership of Augusto Sandino in the 1920s, and that was defeated with his assassination and then terrible repression of his basis of support. Then in the 1950s, a new generation of students led by Carlos Fonseca, almost all of them men, guys, founded the FSLN, the Sandinista National Liberation Front. They remained small and apparently ineffective. I mean, no one knew much about them, their operations, but slowly assisted in building mass organizations, in, colleges and communities, as well as forming guerrilla units based in mountainous areas, as well as clandestine units in Managua, the capital. Well, by the time they got to the 70s and appeared, really after the earthquake, there were mass uprisings and brutal response, bombing and all. But in the 70s, what became really striking to everyone, I think, as it emerged, and then as it emerged victorious in 1979, was the impressive presence of women in the ranks of the guerrillas, 40% of the combatants. And a good half of the leadership of the combatants, the comandantes. And I mean, leading huge divisions toward the end of fighters, guerrilla fighters, which were made up of women and men. Of course, and that would never have happened. And you can almost attribute the success of the revolution to this massiveness. The women's organizations were huge in Nicaragua. Of course, most of the organizers and leaders in the mass organizations were already women, as they've been in struggles around the world forever, I think. But such female presence in the armed struggle was rare. And I don't know, Tina might want to talk a bit about the faction and women's participation there, and also you guys are doing. But even more surprising, the Sandinista women militants were feminists and called themselves feminists. Unlike, we didn't come to that here, but they did. A little bit later, they had already absorbed. So this just blew my mind when I went there and found this out. I became friends with one of those women on my first trip, Sofia Montenegro. She was one of the editors of Barricada, the Sandinista newspaper. And I asked her what had led her, a young woman from upper class, urban, privilege. She spoke perfect English because Somoza preferred English to Spanish. So all the elites sent their young people to, private schools in the United States and colleges, and the whole elite spoke to each other. He didn't allow Spanish to be spoken in the social gatherings that he organized. Had to speak English.